Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode number 40 of Hashtag Jeopardy Live Panel, presented by thejeopardyfan.com. Once again, I am Andy Saunders, and I will be moderating the discussion this evening. We have quite a panel for you. It's not often when somebody who comes third in the Tournament of Champions is the third person on our marquee, but first up we have the reigning Jeopardy champion, Choyan. I was going to give your last name a shot, but let's see. Nah, we're not going to. Choyan C in Jeopardy, the reigning Jeopardy champion, is joining us this evening. I have lots of questions for you. We also have from the hit ABC game show 500 Questions, Megan Barnes. Left us with quite a cliffhanger. Steve is about to face a question on the periodic table. I know a lot of people who would love to be in Steve's shoes right now, but we'll see what happens. As promised, third on the marquee. He was third in the 2006 Tournament of Champions. Bill McDonald, thanks for joining us, Bill.
Just used to being third.
We also have the founder, an all-around awesome person from the JeopardyFan.com, Jeannie Kenkel. Thanks for joining us again, Jeannie. And last and certainly not least, Brian Federa joining us once again. Thanks. You probably are going to have a pet. Are you going to have a pet walk down the stairs on us again, or?
Just on the countertop a second ago. So.
Okay. Well, I will say we're going to get to pet pictures in just a little bit, but I'm going to wait a little bit before we get to that. We've got the viewers tuning in live on the JeopardyFan.com. So, another five-time, we're going to start the discussion with Jeopardy. We had another five-time champion. Had a lot of those lately. This one's a Canadian. I think Andrew was the first Canadian to win 5 games on Jeopardy since the days of Lan Jiang. That was many, many years ago, back in 2001. So obviously, what were your impressions, Choyan, going into Monday's game, seeing Andrew?
Well, actually, I think I'd like to start by saying that I actually have it on good authority that Andrew is actually American, and he made sure to let us know that.
Oh.
Yeah,
hold on a second.
Right.
You realize what country I am from, right?
I absolutely do.
Okay.
You know, I thought I'd let you know.
I had a lot of national pride going here, so you're kind of breaking my heart a little bit.
You know, on the bright side, it kind of leaves the super champion spot open for you to take.
Well, it's that's a good point, but still, you know, it had been a while since somebody, at least claiming to represent Canada, had won 5 games. So yes, okay. In that case, you obviously have on good authority that he is American. So where in the U.S. is he from, and obviously why did he choose to say he was Canadian?
You know, I'm not really sure. I know he's from Seattle, and I know he introduced himself as being from British Columbia, but yeah, he's taught at a lot of places, and I think British Columbia was his latest spot. So, you know, I don't want to be like giving out his secrets right here, but.
Well, in that case, I am glad he said he was from Squamish, British Columbia, and not originally from Seattle, Washington. But so, I mean, what's it like? You know, what's it like to you going in? You know, seeing a 2-day champion, or like what were your first impressions of him?
Well, I mean, he was like an all-round great guy. I guess the first thing that we talked about was the fact that he had spent some time in Providence. So I guess we were both talking about Providence nightlife and stuff to do in town, and we kind of bonded on that. So we were friends, like going in from the start, and
Mhm.
I guess he was playing the first game once we got into the studio, and yeah, he seemed really formidable. I mean, he really knew his way around boards and on the buzzer and things. So it was.
I think your audio is cutting out slightly, so you may want to repeat yourself.
All right. Let's try this one more time. So, what was the last thing you heard?
I would say just start from the top, and then we'll worry about that.
All right. So, yeah, Andrew's actually a really great guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess the first thing that hey.
Hi.
So I guess the first thing that we talked about was the fact that he had spent a lot of, or at least some time in Providence. So we kind of bonded over him, spending time in town,
Mm-hmm.
swapping notes about Providence nightlife and things like that. So, so we really got along well. And also his game was the first one played in the morning, and yeah, once he was on there, he seemed pretty formidable, really strong, knew his way around the boards and the buzzers. So yeah, it was interesting to say the least.
Okay. Now, before I ask you your next question, Troyan, we do have one more person joining us. We have taking David Kendall's spot in the about to be champion seat on our panel tonight. We have longtime Jeopardy wannabe contestant, Learned League player, radio show host, Ken Hellenius. Thanks for joining us, Ken. Glad you were able to make it on. Thanks. Once again, sounds like you're a bit of a game show fan as well, so I look forward to hearing some of your thoughts on Jeopardy 500 questions as we move throughout tonight's panel. Back to Troyan. So obviously, by the time you got to play him, Andrew had won 5 games. What strategies did you have coming into tape day? And did you choose to change those at all after seeing that you were up against a 5-time champion?
The great thing about strategy is that it all goes out of the window once you actually begin playing the game. I guess when I saw the boards, I just began with topics that I thought I could get through easier and left the tougher ones for later. And yeah, I just went on from there.
Do you wish you'd bet any more on your daily doubles in your first couple of games, or in your first game? Because it looks like, obviously you hit back-to-back daily doubles on Thursday, and do you wish you'd bet more on those?
Oh yeah, of course. Hindsight's always 20/20. But I've seen a lot of games where you've seen someone, win a lot of money and then bet big on a daily double and then, basically fall back to square one. So I decided to kind of, play it cautious and just, have something in case I got the second daily double wrong. But yeah, of course, looking back at it, would have been great to Roger Craig it, but nothing I can do about that right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So I just want to break things up a little bit. We'll get back to you, Troyan, in just a second, but oh man, 500 questions. I watched tonight's episode, and that was intense for sure. If you haven't watched it, if you're on the West Coast, watch it.
Watch out.
Watch it at 8 o'clock Pacific because it is one heck of an episode. So I think with the first question, we actually had someone tweet a question to us at #JeopardyLivePanel. If you do have a question for tonight's panel, by the way, you can always tweet #JeopardyLivePanel. I do monitor that as the show progresses, and yeah, I'll be happy to pose it to the panel. But this one is from Jack Dries. This one is for you, Megan. Is there anything you prefer on Jeopardy over 500 questions, or the other way around? Is there anything you prefer on 500 questions over Jeopardy?
Well, I would say I would prefer Jeopardy as a challenger because it's much easier to answer the questions. You know, on 500 questions, as a challenger, you basically are just standing there waiting for the reigning genius to mess up, and you have battles, but besides that, there's not really much you can do. So I was just standing there, just grooving, and so I guess for Jeopardy, you're in more control in that way, as long as you can buzz in. And for 500 questions, I think that the people on the show, not just talking about myself, but just the people that they pick to be on the show are just really amazing, incredibly smart people. So not that they aren't on Jeopardy, but the test to get on to 500 questions was so much harder than the one to get on Jeopardy. There were so many different levels of testing that we went through to get on the show that it was the hardest. I've tried out for lots of different game shows, but it was the hardest one to pass that I've ever taken. And I really liked Richard Quest. I thought the difference between him and Alex Trebek is that, Alex Trebek has done this for over 30 years, so he's just sort of old hat, and Richard, this is his first game show. He was very eager and very excited to be there, and he was just having a lot of fun with it, and just really interested in the contestants and trying to draw us out and ask us about our lives and things. And very ticklish, too.
Is that a spoiler alert, or did something go on backstage?
Well, he did come in when I was getting my makeup done to say hello, and I said, "Oh, hi, Mr. Quest," and he said, "Oh, please call me Richard." He was very nice, but no hanky-panky was going on.
So, now, I'll admit, I basically have been away most of the weekend and didn't get a chance to watch anything from Friday's show. If anyone wants to recap that for our panel, so that we know exactly what it could be construed as a spoiler for those on the West Coast and what isn't. Megan, are you still there? Yes, you are. Awesome. So yes, how many questions did you get through on Friday? Sorry.
On Friday, I was on for the last 10 minutes. I think it was only 6, maybe, that we got through.
I literally just finished watching it on my TiVo, and I think Steve got through what question was like 102 or 103, not long, not far into the hundreds.
Okay.
I think through that end of that hour, they had done 159 questions in 4 hours, so roughly 40 an hour is the pace they've been doing. Sped up a little bit after the first day, but it's still roughly that pace.
Mm-hmm. Now, we've already spoken briefly about the audition process and how difficult it was. I probably should have asked this before I went on air, but did anyone else on our panel apply for 500 questions?
I actually did, and I had to bow out at the last minute in the casting process because I got called for Jeopardy and couldn't do both. And I actually, the day that I taped Jeopardy, I had actually been through all the way up to the preceding Friday with 500 questions at the executive callback, and because I wasn't sure if I ruled ineligible for Jeopardy because I knew somebody who worked for Sony.
Okay.
And I got home from my devastating loss on Jeopardy, and I had an email from 500 Questions as sort of the last thing, and I had to bow out at that point because I had taped Jeopardy, and Jeopardy has a 6-month, exclusive on you after you air. So, so I felt like I was like the lost candidate or something, I knew I went through all the steps to actual taping.
So I guess, knowing the results of Jeopardy, would you have rather gone on 500 questions, Brian?
I don't think so. I think that knowing the results of Jeopardy, I mean, I wanted that shot. had wanted to be on Jeopardy for a long time. It is still Jeopardy, even though the average winnings might not match what the average winnings of a person who actually gets to play the game on 500 questions. At least on Jeopardy, you're guaranteed to get to play the game if you're called. And I know a lot of people who had a somewhat frustrating week because they went to 500 question state and never got called. And we don't know what the thought process was behind who was and who wasn't. So I don't know any regrets. But I'm very interested in the potential season 2 of 500 questions if they have one.
Okay. Now, do you think there's going to be a second season of 500 questions? I mean, the ratings aren't great, but they're not, in today's television climate, they're not horrible either, considering we are in the middle of the Memorial Day weekend in the United States. What's everyone's thoughts? Do you think we'll see a second season?
I don't think so without some serious retooling. Nothing against your liking Richard, Megan, but he's awful. He is too hyped up, and it's too much drama. And my wife was sitting next to me while I was watching the episodes, and she just kept saying how awful this is as television. And she even said, just get to the questions, because I think a lot of us are in that. A lot of us who are trivia fans and quiz show fans are about the questions. And so for me, I don't think it's going to get any farther than these first 7 shows, just because it needs some serious retooling in order to pick it up. That's me.
Anyone else's thoughts?
I feel like I'm kind of the only person that actually likes the show. I feel a lot of the criticism it's received kind of seems like a bit of a bandwagon effect. Someone didn't like it, and then a lot of other people piled on. I kind of like Richard Quest. I think his intensity kind of brings a Thunderdome sort of element to the whole game, and I actually was able to get through all of last week's episodes just fine. But, I think the pace could definitely be picked up because I can see how it would be easy to lose interest, while trying to build stuff up in between. But, yeah, I think there's a couple of things that they could improve, and I hope they get a second season.
Yeah, if they get a second season, I've seen some people say they can't see the questions very well when they're watching, and they don't know what the answer was when somebody's blitzing and throwing out a lot of answers. So to fill up the screen like they do on Jeopardy with the question and throw up the answer at the end too, because they don't really people don't really care about the contestants that much. They mostly want to know the answers and the questions and to test themselves against the contestant.
Now, for the record, I was watching tonight's episode on an old school CRT, not a high def screen at all, and I had no problem seeing any of the questions. So I'm not sure where those complaints are coming from, but I personally did not have I didn't have that issue.
Andy, I can tell you that they're coming from people who are maybe older than we are, because I actually talked to someone today who is older, and even on an HD screen, when you've got the clue on a video board that's in the background of the shot behind the host and the contestant and the challenger, and then you may or may not pin in on it, that is something that can be somebody to read who doesn't have the 20/20 vision. And I think it's unnecessary. It's, as Megan pointed out, on Jeopardy, the clue fills the entire screen because it is the most important information being conveyed. I mean, yes, you would like to see the contestants and see them in other shots, but I think it would be an improvement to bring the question into the foreground of the screen. By the same token, when you're showing a list of the 10 answers, which ones you didn't get, along with the ones you did get on the top 10 question, put that in put that graphic. Take up the whole screen instead of trying to view it up over the host shoulder on a screen as it's scrolling. I mean, that's just very difficult for a lot of people to follow, especially when it's information that's new to them. Sometimes I think in television production, they do things because they can, and they don't necessarily think about, does this serve the viewer in the best possible way? You know, if you pan the camera around and move it around and everything's kind of in motion, it adds an element of drama or excitement or action. But if the information is lost in the process, I think you're not serving the viewer.
Okay. At this point, I think it's time to keep on spinning the merry-go-round into various different segments. I know last time on Jeopardy Live Panel, I asked people to tweet us their favorite pet pictures. Hopefully hopefully you remember that, but I've got some pictures that I want to show at this point. I've picked 6 that were tweeted into us. Let's see if I can figure out how to do the screen sharing properly. I've just picked one. These are going to show in absolutely no particular order. Let's see. First up, we have, courtesy of Kristen Sauceville, we have 3 cats, Cupcake, Camden, and Jazz. Let's see, what else have I got? We also have, let's work on the screen sharing a little bit. Okay, so back to me. We now have, courtesy of Randy Gold, we have Sunshine and Lulu.
That picture right there.
Okay, moving on, another one, moving on to, I think somebody on our panel will recognize this picture, but let's see here, courtesy of our own Megan, we have...
Oh, Thunder.
Thunder,
Oh.
yes.
Megan,
Yeah.
how old is Thunder?
Thunder is about 2.5. We just adopted him in November.
Far out.
And yes, we gained a dog and lost a couch.
Was it a 1-for-1 trade, or?
Are they about the
Pardon?
same weight?
Maybe. He's about the same weight as both of my sons put together. He was 70 pounds when we got him. He's 75, 80 maybe now.
Oh.
Awesome.
Do you play the intro to AC/DC's Thunderstruck every time he enters a room?
Genius.
Say, bring on the Thunder. Now we need to get a cat and just call him Thundercat.
For that matter, Back in Black also works, obviously.
Yes.
Mhm. Okay, so moving on, I have a couple more pictures I'd like to show. Moving on, we've got another nice.
Aw.
We have Daisy, courtesy of Leanne Roberts at Ent Misbehaven, and that's, I believe, Leanne mentioned that Daisy is 10 years old, an Australian Shepherd / who knows what else mix. We also have a couple more that basically I kept it to one per person. One picture per person on the when I was selecting, and my next picture we have, courtesy Carrie Green. We have Hazel. I thought this was I liked this picture of Carrie's submissions. So that once again that is Hazel. And finally, last but not least, courtesy of David Kendall, one.
I was going
more.
to say, David surely submitted one.
Oh yes, David definitely submitted one. I wish he'd said here. David didn't tweet the name though, which disappointed me. It was
Oh,
just
that's cute.
Adorable.
Wasn't
very
his name?
adorable.
Wasn't his name Sunshine too? I thought.
That's right, if I remember. If now that I think about it, but yes, that is courtesy of our regular panelist, Dave Kendall. So thanks, everyone. And once again, if you have other pets you'd like to share with us on the panel, feel free to tweet pictures to us. I will turn this into a regular segment, I think, making sure. Because pet pictures are pretty cute. I'm not going to lie. So, yeah, so... For those of you on the West Coast, this may be a spoiler, but I suspect that Choyin is going to go viral. So if you're on the East Coast, you'll know why. If you're on the West Coast, you'll find out either in a couple of minutes or half an hour. But Choyin, how did Alex react after the show to your Kinky Boots answer?
He actually, I actually can't remember much about what happened because, after that happened, we were kind of, doing the contestant talk and, we were talking about the game and how things went, and he seemed to be in good spirits, I would say.
That's good. For the uninitiated, there is a Deadspin article that was shared with me about, 90 minutes before we went on air tonight regarding tonight's Final Jeopardy. It is the title of the Deadspin article. It is from their Screen Grabber section. Jeopardy champ provides an all-time great wrong answer. So,
Is it on par with What is a Hoe?
Oh, it's probably going to be on par with What is a Hoe. So.
Okay, all right. Well, good job.
I don't think it was crazy an answer as they're making it out to be, because there are some very weird sects of Judaism that actually celebrate that. So.
But now, to Deadspin's credit and their writer's credit, it did note at the end of the article that Kinky Boots is in fact a Tony-winning musical. So it's not, again, much like What's a Hoe. What's a Hoe is on for Ken Jennings was, a plausible response to the question that just happened to be wrong. And I think that's one reason. I guess you might almost ask, do you think the writers are smart enough to have written this question with Kinky Boots as a wrong answer in mind?
Oh, no, not even close. A lot of it was the fact that, musicals aren't exactly my forte. So when I saw Tony winning in 2009, that's the first thing that came to mind. And, it was either that or Book of Mormon, but I guess that, wasn't, a Jewish book, I would guess. So I just put down I panicked, put down something, and, that's what you got right there. So, I guess the moral of this story is bone up on musicals next time. So.
And you want to write something, even if you have no idea, you want to put something down. So
Exactly.
I answered Hobby Lobby when the answer was Radio Shack. They're not exactly businesses, but better than nothing.
Yeah, I remember I remember the clue you're talking about, and I read it 5 times and couldn't make any sense of it. So, yeah, I don't blame you.
Am I allowed to say that I got that Radio Shack final? But I suppose but I also remembered in the back of my head that Radio Shack had been in the news for bankruptcy. But
you're allowed to say it because it didn't matter, because he had already won in a runaway. So win, I might be, but because I had screwed up my daily double wager immediately before that, it was all moot.
Mm-hmm. So I guess we haven't heard much from you, Bill. What do you think of 500 Questions? I presume you've had a chance to watch it?
Oh, I finally had the chance to watch it today, as a matter of fact. I watched all 3 of the episodes that have been broadcast here in California So, and I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised, having read all of the criticism before having seen it. I was expecting something that was a lot more ponderous and unenjoyable. But of course, I always knew that the contestants were going to be the fun part, and that was really the best part of the show, was watching the contestants and watching them interact and have fun. So I very much enjoyed it.
Do you now? I guess we can talk about Steve a little bit, who is obviously. Basically, I would say his contribution to Jeopardy! Live panel so far has been of supreme troll, but that is neither here nor there. I think his last comment using the hashtag was with regards to a bit of a cliffhanger tonight, with the because of course they chose to cut things off at a very much of a cliffhanger point, but as primetime television is wont to do. But yes, and of course he was trying to get Megan to spill some information last time Megan was on. So clearly Steve is a supreme troll, and I can't wait for everyone to troll him when he finally joins us on an actual panel, which he. Unfortunately, he was unable to this evening, but I'm sure he will join us soon, and then everyone tuning in will have all sorts of trolly questions for Steve. But I can't wait. So yeah, I would say Steve is quite impressed so far over the first to the end of Friday's episode for sure. That things have definitely picked up over episode 1, and I'm curious to see how much farther he can go. Whether it's one more question or 500 more, or 500 questions, to be honest. But
you're going to have to speed up for anybody to get to 500 questions.
Yeah.
How many episodes?
Can I just say? Can I say something, Andy?
Yes, go
It's
ahead.
not. Why, thank you. It's not really a secret, because there is a picture on the official ABC website. There were a number of people, including myself, who were in the audience watching the show as part of the potential pool of people who could have been able to play. And so I got to be with Megan and the other folks, and I have to say, I was in a Tournament of Champions, and I was with this group here, and this group was by far the most intimidating and most entertaining group of game show people I've ever had the pleasure of being with. When I walked into the room and met who they all were the first time, I couldn't breathe for a minute, because there were so many illustrious and people that I knew. Some people I'd met before, some people I'd only heard of, but I just knew how amazing they all were, not just in terms of their trivia knowledge, but how great they were going to be as contestants on television. And I was I was really intimidated by it, but I'm so pleased to have seen that when they got on the show, they really, I mean, I think the contestants are just by far the best part of the show. They have done such a great job in showing off their personality, in building the drama, and I really feel like the contestants, if it's renewed, it's going to be because over the next week, people talk about how much fun it is to watch them, and their ratings will build up that way.
Well, I will say that I had a lot of fun watching Megan and Steve battle this evening, and I have to say I am quite impressed with the inside jokes that.
I'm impressed that they were all left in.
Yes. At one point, Well, I hope for Stefan's sake that I hope for Stefan Goodrow's sake that he was not watching this evening. That may or not be a spoiler, but
Huh.
Stefan is the guy who actually referred me, sent my invitation to Learned League when I met him at a taping in the audience of a Tournament of Champions. And I remember, Bill, you mentioned walking into a room and being stunned. I walked in as just a guest in the audience at what ended up being a Tournament of Champions Day taping, and Jerome Vered and Stefan Goodrow sitting there, and I was just like, I know who you guys are. This is amazing, you know. And so it was kind of one of those same moments of just you know, quiz show royalty, as you might think.
yeah. And of course, one thing that we can speak to is my personal favorite line of this upcoming episode is when Megan refers to Steve as very learned.
Yeah, so it was exciting to meet Steve because I had just finished the mythology mini league that he had written for Learned League. So I saw him at O'Brien's, and I told him it was me and my friends were all very excited to play that and discuss the questions with each other because we are all like classics majors and things. So it was right up our alley. And he also had a one day called Colossal Failures that was pretty awesome too. Yeah. So I think he mentions in one of the shows, I just wrote a question about this. He's also a very good writer of trivia questions as well as a good answerer of trivia questions.
Okay. So yes, that was a. I have to say, no, I was after watching tonight's episode, I honestly hope that it does receive a renewal, even though sometimes the networks can be very capricious with this sort of thing, and I'm never really sure as to what network executives are thinking. However, at least it's not Fox, so we don't have to worry about them pulling a Firefly on the show. So,
the ratings are actually kind of interesting because, in terms of overall audience, it doesn't have Bafo numbers. In fact, each of the first 3 episodes had a smaller audience than Million Second Quiz, which everyone views as kind of a disaster. But the numbers in the 18 to 49 demographic, it's been doing well in its time period, either winning or finishing second in the time period. Although the numbers are sort of relatively low, it's at a time when there just aren't a lot of people watching network TV. All the first round episodes are over, and so I think it is going to be interesting for the network to decide what to do with it. I don't know what the production costs are. They obviously spent a lot of money on the set, and what kind of revenue it's going to generate in terms of ad sales. But it is, I think, an interesting call for the network. But it has some very powerful people behind it, which probably weigh in its favor, namely Mark Burnett and Mark, or what's the other guy's name? What's the other guy's name? Mark. You know what I'm talking about?
Mike, yeah, I can't remember his last name.
I
know they brought it to Cannes and showed it to the European market too, and they had some interest from countries there to bring it out. I don't know if they actually sold it to any of the other countries to bring out foreign versions of it, but it's something that could definitely be replicated in other places, and it's a simple enough format that they could do it or bring it back for a week again sometime in like the end of the summer or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What a great idea.
Give some more people, because I mean, okay, I guess on the subject of budgets, prize budget for the show, obviously, it doesn't feel like they're giving away, it feels like they're giving away Jeopardy money for a primetime television show. Does that seem to make sense, or?
Yeah, they're definitely not marketing it as the largest game show prize in history or anything like the Million Second Quiz did. I think I saw Mark Burnett saying, that he's given away $1 million on Survivor every season, and it's just not that exciting anymore to have that big number. Personally, it would be pretty exciting for me to win $1 million. I wouldn't mind, but I do like the focus being on the questions rather than a huge payout. But I've seen a lot of different suggestions about different things they could do for just from viewers to change it up a little. I think it's just having $1,000 for every question gets old after a while. That they could add it for each round. You get start with 1,000, and if you make it to the second round, you do 2,000, 3,000, something like that, and not really like increase it by that much, but just make it a little more interesting.
That actually kind of makes sense. Now, what do we think of or I guess to ask everyone else on the panel, what would you change anything about the show? And if so, what would you change about the show?
I'm already on record. So.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Pacing. I think that's been a common complaint. The questions go faster, and I think you hold everyone's attention.
Okay, that seems fair. At this point, I think I have a couple more segments to go through. My first up, I know I've always generally spoken about various craft beers on the show, so much to Jeannie's chagrin, my general talking about the craft beer of the week. This one is the Nickelbrook Headstock India Pale Ale. I mean, those of you who have heard me speak about beer on the show know that I tend to gravitate towards either fruity wheat beers or strong hoppy IPAs. This one fits the latter for sure. It's 80 IBUs, 7% alcohol. It's from Burlington's Nickelbrook Brewery. Now, full disclosure, Nickelbrook and their Green Apple was a sponsor of one of my trivia shows for a few years through one of my bars. However, this is definitely no Green Apple. If you want a good American-style IPA, this is really good. Once again, you would be able to find me on the Untapped app. I tweet out generally whenever I drink a beer or a new beer. I am ONTQUIZR on Untapped. So if you're curious to know what I think about other beers, you can follow me on that. Now, while I search through for other people tweeting us at #JeopardyLivePanel, does anyone on the panel have any other questions for anyone else on the panel at this point?
Yeah, I have a question for
can?
C.
Sure.
I just was, as a longtime boardie, what do you feel that brought to your Jeopardy performance? Were you afraid that people were going to make fun of you on the board? Did that change anything, or just how your preparation changed because of the J-board?
Actually, I think J-board's a great resource. Anytime you go on there, I mean, you can talk to people that have been on the show. People that are extremely smart that know a thing or two about trivia, and I think just being able to look at the different threads that people had talking about their experience kind of helped me in a sense to kind of prepare me for what was to come. So yeah, I think it's been great, and also TDs, I haven't done one in a long time, but I always think those are great at just like kind of keeping things fresh and just making sure you don't forget stuff. So yeah, I can't say enough good things about J-board. So,
Joanne, what's your handle?
I'm sorry?
What's your handle on the J-board?
I am also known as I Have Jeopardy. All one word.
Okay. Very good. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Likewise. Hope to run to you soon.
No, Brian, did you want to say something? Because I think Jeannie was
It
asking.
looked like you were starting to say something at the end of the 500 questions thing.
Oh, yeah. So there are just a couple other things about the show that I think would improve it for the viewer. I talked earlier about, bringing information to the foreground. But another thing that you can do, and that they could do, and you see this on any baseball or football or basketball, hockey game, whatever, we now have the constant time score graphic, which is a development that I actually wasn't crazy about when it first happened, but it's just a sort of reality in the world we live in now. Why isn't there a graphic in the corner at all times telling you how much this person has, A, in the bank, and B, at play on the board? Because they're updating the numbers only sort of periodically, and I think it makes it harder for people to keep track. It might also help people understand better when a person gets the $1,000 or doesn't get the $1,000, and it would do it in a way that wouldn't require Richard Quest to take 10 seconds to explain it every time. Because I think the biggest improvement I think the show needs to address is that there's too much time where the host is talking about the rules, and that takes time away from questions and answers and the contestants showing their personalities, which is absolutely the strong suit. Those two things are the strong suit of the show, in my opinion. And others have said similar things. If every time he's explaining that what it means when you have 2 strikes, or that why you didn't get a 1,000 question, that is just, you could get through 20 more questions a show without all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then you might actually get 500 questions in 9 hours, which they were never going to do at the pace they're going.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's an excellent point, Brian, and I hope that if there is a second season, that they take some of those ideas and or suggestions to some sort of heart. So, because I mean, obviously, I don't know. After seeing this, after seeing 500 questions, I certainly enjoyed watching it more than I enjoyed watching Million Second Quiz, and I hope it does come back. And
Good.
I'm not entirely sure why Buzzer Blog chose to completely trash the show after its first episode, and just, basically all it does is make fun of the entire show. Like, for example, they're running a counter on how many questions they get through, and I'm like, what's the point of that? Are you like trying to see game shows go away or something like that? I find it baffling, to be honest. But
Well, I think if you have a show named 500 Questions, people are going to expect to see 500 questions. I think there might be too much. If it had a different name, people might have liked it more, because now everyone's saying, where's the 500 questions? Why is it taking so long to get to 500 questions? Where we're maybe like doing like a 50-question round and trying to fit that into 1 hour would make it speedier trivia and be more interesting to people, instead of holding out this 500 questions, which is a long time for anyone to watch.
My wife's question when we were watching, when Dan got knocked out and Steve took over, she said, so do they start over at 0 questions now? I mean, and she just rolled her eyes. So I think that kind of fits with what you're saying. 500 questions, show me 500 questions, or the 350 that it takes to get there, however many it takes, because the actual rule is you just have to get to 500 without getting 3 in a row wrong. So we all know that means nobody's going to face 500 questions, or at least 500 right. So
do you think that this show might have a better chance in syndication?
I have no clue.
Because, I mean, obviously you might see people get to 500 questions, 5 days a week in a syndicated show like a Jeopardy or a Millionaire.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that they would need to make the questions significantly easier if they were going to make it syndicated, because they would be cranking through a lot more people, and then they would need to basically not be as extensive in their audition process, and they would if they did that, they're just not going to have the quality of people that they've had this week.
I would say that there are enough people that might fit that quality that I can think of a number of people off the top of my head that are high-ranking players in Learned League that might be a good fit. You know, I think it would take them a while to go through the number of contestants that for a syndicated program. I mean, I would say Jeopardy doesn't have an issue finding qualified contestants, and obviously I guess you could say their testing process isn't as stringent as 500 questions, but I think there are enough smart Americans or North Americans out there to fill at least a couple of seasons of 500 questions. Would I get agreement here to that?
I agree with Bill that it would lose something because the average pool of 12 players that are called to tape on a day of Jeopardy that's a formidable group, but it does not stack up to the nearly twice that many people that they had in the pool for this event. I mean, this was every single person in that pool was exceptionally qualified. Everyone in that pool was capable of, and in some cases are, multi-day or tournament of champions, level Jeopardy player. And I think it's much harder to do that on a day-by-day basis, cranking out shows week after week in syndication. This was a special event that people, word got out, and everybody sort of gathering the trivia juggalos in Glendale for this special event.
I think we have a new hashtag.
Yeah.
Gathering of the Trivia Juggalos.
The gathering of the Trivia Juggalos.
Awesome.
Okay.
So
So at
speaking of
this
the
point,
gathering,
sorry, go ahead.
I was
You
just
go
gonna
ahead.
say-
Go.
I was gonna say, speaking of the gathering, is anyone going to Ticona this year?
Yes.
It's a distinct possibility for me for the first time because I'd love to meet all you all.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be there. So
You were there last year, right, Trev?
I'm sorry.
You were there last year, right?
Yeah. We played at Nodgeball. Remember?
Yeah, I think I told you you were the doppelganger for our missing fourth Quiz Bowl player who we won in spite of his absence. We were tempted to just have you sit there and pretend you were him.
You know what? I would have liked that. I wouldn't have complained.
That is a learned leaguer, Dusamili V, who was a Jeopardy champion and but dead to us after he bailed on us.
Now, Nodgeball is something I'd like to see on television. I think that's a pretty interesting combination of physical skill and mental ability.
It is intense. I can vouch for that.
I have spoken very recently to of someone very, very high up in the Nodgeball organization. You can guess who it is. But he came to my viewing of my Jeopardy disaster, and he is. There's good news on that front. It sounds like they are working diligently towards possibly making that a reality.
Huh.
Oh, that's great.
I love the sound of that.
There's interest. There's interest from the network nabobs.
I believe I participated last fall in a sort of tryout in front of somebody who is associated with some network. I certainly don't remember the name, but I helped the Nodgeball people play in front of these people, and it seemed to go well. So good luck to them. Although I thought the game was so exhausting that I would probably die if I actually had to play it in front of an audience.
That is
Even more reason to put it on television. Sorry, Bill, but
No, that would be there would certainly be ratings if you could.
exactly.
It would be like the Indianapolis 500, only with trivia.
Somebody with an AED just off screen,
Yes. So, like, we need more contests that are like they shoot horses, don't they?
It's more than 3 years of
And he
Nodgeball.
burst into flames.
It's more than 3 years of Nodgeball at Ticona. There hasn't been a single blown Achilles tendon or cardiac arrest because it is like, I think for some people it's there's no aerobic activity for 7 months of the year, and then all of a sudden 90 seconds of incredibly intense. And I was somebody last year who was very diligent about working out, and I've never had any problems. And I did 90 seconds of dodgeball, and it hurt for like 5 days afterwards.
Oh.
You got to stretch.
And when you're physically exhausted, your brain stops working. I mean, in the middle of the play, when we were running around, I got the question, who was the female lead in Gone with the Wind? And I literally could not think of the answer. I was like, how can I not know the female lead in Gone with the Wind? But it was just your brain is so exhausted from the running.
It really is very hard to do those two things at the same time. I remember having moments where, I'd be very focused on like throwing the ball at the other team, and then all of a sudden I'd hear a voice, and I'd go, "Oh, I'm supposed to be answering these questions, aren't I?" Like, it's really hard to do them both at the same time. It's like left brain, right brain, but tough.
Awesome.
And I think that has I think that part of that is, or that I should say, that has much to do with the appeal of Dodgeball, that it kind of tests both halves of your brain.
And I think the interesting thing would be to see on TV if it's the Studley team with the not as bright people on it that did better, or the more geeky guys with maybe not as in tone would be the champions at the end.
And like, clearly there would be slow motion replays of the ball hitting people, and
we'd have to get Buck Laughlin and what was the other guy from Best in Show as your commentators.
Yes.
First year at Tacoma, they filmed the whole thing, and there are some amazing outtakes of people falling into the no-go zone in the middle, and people getting hit, and some pretty hilarious interviews after the matches with the players. It was a bitter rivalry between the blue players and the red players. It really almost broke out into violence at the end. Something else.
Mm-hmm. Now, in terms of some show housekeeping, I guess you could say episode 41 will be taking place at some point this weekend. However, as best as I can tell, it will more than likely be live on location from Chicago. Interestingly enough, at the NAQT High School National Championship Tournament, there is going to be a human versus computer showdown. There's a human versus computer quiz bowl match between 4 humans and an artificial intelligence trained to compete on toss-ups. The four people of representing humanity. You may recognize some of these names. Humanity's champions will be Colby Burnett, Ben Ingram, Alex Jacob, and Kristen Sauceville.
Nice.
Oh, humans!
There you go. Go humans.
The talk will start at 8 p.m. Central in the Grand Ballroom at the National Championship Tournament, 8 p.m. Central on Saturday evening, then followed by the exhibition game. I'm not entirely sure what that will mean for live panel taping, as I was probably hoping to tape live panel about 9 Central, so that might throw a wrench into things, but we shall see. I will do my best to fit live panel around that, because obviously I would hopefully get some people like, some of humanity's representatives. Obviously, 2 of those representatives were on live panel when I taped live from Dallas. I will promise those of you who wish to that there will probably be less alcohol consumed beforehand. So, but
wait, were we supposed to drink alcohol tonight? Because nobody told me.
I thought it was just a given, Bill, but
this is just Gatorade. If I had known, I could have put something in it.
Next.
This explains a lot of Brian's answers.
Well, it was implied. See what I did there?
But at this point, we're almost at the hour mark. So, does anyone else have any other questions for anyone else on the panel?
Yeah, I have one more question.
Yes, go ahead, Jeannie.
I wondered how the Sports Jeopardy test went. You guys talked a little bit about that last week.
I heard a rumor that apparently lots of people had some technical difficulties on that, and they may be offering another test.
Oh, didn't you try and take it too?
Pardon me?
Didn't you take the test too?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I didn't write the Sports Jeopardy test.
Oh.
I took it. I didn't have technical difficulties.
Okay.
Oh.
But that was one thing, actually, I heard from a couple of game show fans at Reach for the Top this past weekend that they would be offering another another test because there were so many technical difficulties. Some people either couldn't see the test or received the adult, the previous adult full Jeopardy test. So.
Well, how was it, Brian?
I did not think it was very challenging, but sports is a strong suit of mine. I work for the Allied Sports Bureau, and I spend far too much time in pursuit of sports related activity. So.
Okay.
And like even the things that might have been tricky, like questions about things that arguably aren't even sports, like golf, they were guessable. Like there was a question about a golfer who had endorsed something, and I just said, well, Phil Mickelson seems like a good guess, and it was right. So.
Oh, okay.
And like that.
Well, good luck. I hope you passed.
Oh, thank you. So and then when they had questions about maybe less high-profile things, like for example the Tour de France, the question was basically what is the name of each segment of the race, which doesn't require you to know who Eddie Merckx is or Miguel Indurain. Like you need to know which is not exactly a deep knowledge of that niche sport, and like a lot of the questions in the niche sports were like that.
Yeah. Okay.
But obviously, we may have some more news on that front, especially with the rumors that I had heard from the Reach for the Top, or from people at the Reach for the Top Nationals. Speaking of which, congratulations to Ottawa's Lisker Collegiate Institute, who won the Canadian Reach for the Top National Finals earlier today in Toronto. Now, before I load up the credits, do we have anyone else with any other questions? Looks like we have cricket, so I will use that as my excuse to say thank you all for tuning in. We had lots of viewers tonight. The numbers were quite nice, so thanks for tuning in. Thanks to all of our panelists for joining. Megan, I hope you get a chance to answer. I hope you get, or at least I hope you get lots more airtime on 500 questions. Nothing against you, Steve, but I'm hoping. I'm cheering for Megan at this point. I don't know, just because. So.
Thank you.
One last thing about 500 questions that I hope they change the next time around, which your good wishes remind me of.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who saw the commercials that aired before the show started, they gave away a lot of information on some of these things that are suspenseful or cliffhangers in the show, and I'm not going to say one way or the other, but it would have been very easy to edit those promos in a way that did not give those things away, and I don't know why they go to do that. So there's less suspense on some of these things than there needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Jeopardy's had some problems with that too, with their promos showing that a certain champion is going to be on until Wednesday or something like that. So they just got to talk to each other, I guess, the people making the commercials and the people making the show.
Right.
But at this point, I'd like to once again thank everyone for tuning in. Thank you for joining us, everyone. I hope to have all of you on again at some point. So hopefully we'll be able to fit a live on-location taping in Chicago to and also, I guess, because we're probably taping after the Human versus Computer, best of luck to humanity. I'm sorry if you're cheering for the computer, but I am cheering for the humans. For everyone here at thejeopardyfan.com, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night. Have a great week.